What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Evergrey, Theories of Emptiness. Comes out on June 7th on Napalm Records. This is their second album on Napalm, and, well, this band, I've talked about their last three albums on the channel, and all three of them were very good to outstanding, if you ask me. So yeah, Evergrey, Swedish progressive metal band, bordering at times on classic heavy metal and power metal, but I would say it's definitely more just straight up prog metal with some mainstream, well, not mainstream, but more accessibility, I guess you could say. And I feel like on their last album, I believe it was called The Orphan Testament, I believe, which came out in 2022. That one kind of showed hints towards some more accessibility within their songs, and I think that kind of gets pushed a little bit further. Excuse me. Wow. That was a big one. And I think that accessibility gets pushed even further on this album. Starting off with Falling from the Sun, you get this nice galloping rhythm, and then there's riffs that do kind of remind me of Dream Theater whenever they get into their more hooky type of songwriting style. And then, of course, some chug comes in here. Like, I will say, ever since I first started listening to Evergrey back when The Atlantic came out in 2019, I'm like, man, this band's got some heavy, chuggy riffs. And you get plenty of chug on this album, especially here on this track, but I love how the vocals and the melodies just soar. And I really think that adds a lot of dynamic to these songs, is whenever Thomas England's vocals and his melodic playing on the guitar along with Hendrik, the other guitarist, they know how to write great, tasty melodies and harmonies. But also, one of the big sneak attacks of this album is that while the production's pretty crunchy and it's a little bit on the polished side, I love how during like some of the bigger progressions, the bass kind of gets a chance to shine and keep the rhythm going, and that gets pushed further on the following track, Misfortune, where you get this like heavy riff but with a groove. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Soen, if I must say so. And again, during them big progressions, the bass really kind of takes over the rhythm section and really kind of has its own voice. But I forgot to mention that back with Falling from the Sun, beautiful piano work. And I gotta say, the keyboards and the pianos on this entire album, I think, were quite tasteful, and they don't sound cheesy really at all. And I love how on the third track, to become someone else, the keyboards kind of remind me a little bit of Deep Purple, a little bit. Like, it has a little bit of that like 70s touch to it. But with Misfortune, you also get some like cool gang vocals, and this, as well as the track One Heart, I really like the gang vocals on those tracks. But one thing that definitely comes out, especially on Misfortune, both Tom and Hendrik, they just know how to create some really cool lead trade-offs. Like, you'll hear one of them do a lead, and then the other one will kind of come along afterwards to keep that lead going, and you can tell each of them have their own unique style. But back to Become Someone Else, the clean guitars that start this track remind me a little bit of Opeth, I gotta admit. And then the triplet chugs that come in here, and triplet chugs are only on this album very sparingly, and I think really it's just this track where it comes out the most. And then you even get like a clean section that I think kind of reminds me a little bit of Borknagar. And then there's even a breakdown, which I think this is the only time on the album I would say that there is a breakdown. And it was a really cool one at that. Then the following track, Say. This one I think kind of goes for more of like a hard rocking style, so to speak. Like, catchy opening riffs, it's groovy, and it's got a bit of a hard rock flair to it, but I would say kind of 70s inspired, especially in the lead work with the trade-offs and the way the leads are themselves, kind of give off a little bit of a 70s vibe, which I can appreciate a band going for a more old school approach. Ghost of My Hero, which was probably one of the only ballad tracks on the album, but it's not cheesy. It's a very earnest ballad about remembering someone you looked up to growing up and no longer being in your life. But it starts off kind of like, it's almost like a somber doom song, almost kind of like Catatonia a little bit, which I'll be mentioning Catatonia again later on. But I love how at one point the atmosphere kind of gets a bit subdued, and there's even some like chants to kind of add on to that eerie atmosphere of the song. We Are the North, nice syncopated riff and rhythm to start off, almost like Tesseract but with haunting keyboards on top. There's even some Mastodon dissonance on this track, and there's some Opeth triplet swings, which is really cool. One Heart, like I said, gang vocals, but this one kind of brings out even more classic metal vibes, like almost like Judas Priest, like a more modernized, proggy Judas Priest. And I love the harmonies on the track as well. They were just quite tasty. The Night Within, this one kind of goes for a little more of like the more accessible Dream Theater approach with the keyboards, but with big progressions. And I love the cymbal work. I gotta admit, the drums on this album were quite tasty, especially on this track with the different variations on the cymbals. Cold Dreams, which is the longest track of the album, almost 7 minutes, featuring Tom's daughter, Salina England, but also Jonas Rinsk from Catatonia. And this one, I think, might be the best track on the entire album. You get the rather mysterious atmosphere. There's some dark synths going on to kind of give like a dark synthwave kind of sound, but it's got some doominess to it, and it soars. Even the speed picks up to like a D beat and almost thrash metal at one point, but it does retain like a somber quality. And Jonas' vocals were more of his death growls. Like, I don't think I really heard his clean vocals at all on this track. Like, he was just supplying some death growls to the song. But the lead work on this track definitely give me a lot of David Gilmour vibes, and also a beautiful sad piano at the end. And then to Our Way Through Silence, this one has some uplifting qualities to it. Kind of reminds me of Amorphous a little bit. It's another one of them earnest songs, and of course, tasty leads. And then the closing track, the title track, A Theory of Emptiness, it was just a kind of a needless piano spoken word piece. I don't really like the piano work was great. The spoken word I didn't care for. I almost kind of wish they could have incorporated just a piano piece into like the middle of one of the songs to kind of expand on it. Now, as far as the production, like I said, it's crunchy, it's got punch to it, but maybe a little bit clean. Maybe a little too clean in comparison to like their previous 3 albums. And then probably my only other complaint, while it is heavy, I do wish it could have stayed heavier a little bit longer. You can definitely tell Evergrey's going for a little more of an accessible approach. Not a bad thing. At the end of the day, it's still Evergrey at its core, but I would like to hear some more prog going on than what we already got. But overall, this was still another pretty damn good offering. I don't think it's as good as their previous 3 albums, but I still think it's a pretty good offering. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's definitely Evergrey, still at its core, like I said, but definitely going for a slightly more accessible approach, and I guess we'll see where they go from here. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.